Okay, guys, I'm gonna do top 10 disturbing interviews with the evil people, part 4.
This countdown, we have the psychopath's behavior.
I was the punisher. I was the one who decided punishment over the. I was the one who spanked.
This interview features a man named Robert, who has been deemed a psychopath. In the interview, he talks about the crimes he has committed and his thought processes as he commits these crimes, or lack thereof. What's horrifying is how candidly he talks about this all, and how he's proud of his crimes. He also shows no shame or guilt.
I would tell myself, well, she's not going to be like that. She is going to be perfect. Right. I tell myself that.
Just then, he was talking about a young girl he took advantage of and basically coerced her into having a relationship with him. You can tell he got a sense of pleasure while talking about what he did to that individual. It's very sickening.
I was grooming her to fit me.
It's so creepy how he is so calm while talking about all of this. Again, he's gaining this sense of pleasure just thinking back to his crimes. In our number 9 spot today, we have John Battaglia. John Battaglia is certainly quite a piece of work. On May 2nd, 2001, the mother of his 2 daughters dropped the girls off for their weekly visit with their father. Unfortunately, instead of having dinner like they were supposed to, John ended up killing the girls instead. I'm not going to go into any of the details of that because it is obviously an incredibly horrible situation, but he did do this while on the phone with the girl's mother, and he says that his dislike for her is the reason behind these killings. Whether that is true or not, I just want to make it absolutely clear that there is never a good enough reason to do something like this. After deliberating for just 19 minutes, the jury in his trial found him guilty of the highest charge, which is capital murder. On February 1st, 2018 at 9:40 p.m., John was executed by the state. John has always held up this act of the doting and devoted father, and hearing him talk about the girls is incredibly chilling. He talks about them with a sense of pride and love, like he didn't do one of the most evil things in the entire world.
Get married, she had stomach about 8 or 9 months, pregnant, when she took me a picture.
What do you think about them? What do you think about?
You think about your best friend.
Also, how he continues to blame his ex-wife for the death of his children is pretty telling of just how messed up his mind really was.
She brought my daughters, and she brought my daughter.
I mean, do you feel like you were killing them to get back at your
I don't feel like I killed.
what? Coming in at number 8, we have Susan Atkins.
But that we were instructed to go all the way down every house, hit every house on the
street?
yes.
And kill all the people
All the people in all those houses.
Susan Atkins was an American murderer and loyal member of the Manson cult. She participated in 8 killings, all under the order of Charles Manson. In the cult, she went by the name Sadie Mae Flutes, or Sexy Sadie. She also played a role in the killing of famous actress Sharon Tate. In this interview, Susan talks about the Tate murder.
And we drove to the house with instructions to kill everyone in the house.
From Charlie.
Yeah.
Now, what made people mad about this interview is they claim that Susan was trying to act like a victim. She was trying to gain sympathy to lessen her sentence.
The people in the house were all brought into the living room and tied up, and I remember that Wojtek Bykowski, I believe is his name. I had tied his hands with a towel and then was instructed to kill him.
Whether she has actual remorse or not, hearing her recount the night of this dark deed is very creepy. In our 7th spot, we have Bernard Giles.
Wife and daughter, and something hit you, and you went, no, today may be the day.
Every day may be the day.
Every day.
Every day may be the day.
serial killer Bernard Giles recounts his first murder to Piers Morgan. It is so chilling to hear him talk in depth about what he did to Nancy Jerry. He told Morgan that he picked her up and drove her to a wooded area where he did the deed. What's scary is that out of all the people Morgan has interviewed, Bernard is the first one who
Sorry,
didn't
guys.
try to prove his innocence. He openly admits that he's guilty and has killed people. At the beginning of the interview, Morgan says, and I quote, "You are serving 5 life sentences for killing 5 young women. My first question is, did you kill those women?" And he calmly replies with, "Yes, sir, I did." This dude has no remorse and no emotions. He even admits to it. What a creepy, creepy dude. In our number 6 spot today, we have Tommy Lynn Sells. Tommy Lynn Sells was an American serial killer who is responsible for 22 confirmed deaths, but authorities have said that they know there are more. One of the aspects that scares me the most while watching him talk about his crimes is how you can tell that he committed these acts because he wanted to and because he liked it.
It was the best feeling I ever had in my life. And the first time I killed somebody, it was such a rush. And it was just like that shot of dope. Every time I did it, it was that rush again.
There is no doubt that Tommy is an actual psychopath, but on December 31st in 1999, Tommy messed with the wrong girl. After severely injuring Crystal Searles, who he thought was dead, this incredible young girl was able to walk a quarter of a mile with a severed trachea to her neighbor's house, where they of course got her help. Crystal ended up surviving and gave such a good description of Tommy, and in the end was able to identify him to the authorities. Crystal not only survived her own absolute nightmare, but she most definitely saved who knows how many lives with her bravery. In watching Tommy talk about his crimes, there is clearly just a lack of emotion or an emptiness behind his eyes.
If I called you something that you didn't like, you think about killing me?
Well, if we was in a fight, you'll get your head down in the concrete and, so be it. But,
What happens when my head goes down to the concrete?
well, what do you think happened? It cracks like a coconut.
Tommy ended up being executed on April 3rd, 2014. In our number 5 spot today, we have Alex Enriquez. Alex Enriquez is more commonly known as the Bronx serial killer. Alex is convicted of killing 3 females from 1989 to 1990 and is currently serving 3 consecutive 25 years to life sentences. Alex has been incarcerated since the early 90s, but still, to this day, maintains that he was innocent. There wasn't an overwhelming amount of physical evidence in this case, but there was a detail that Alex gave to authorities in an interrogation that was true to the crime, but it was a fact that police didn't even know at the time. So how could Alex have possibly known this? A few years ago, Alex sat down with Piers Morgan for an interview where he, of course, claimed his innocence while also telling some pretty confusing stories.
The bodies. You gave them a particular piece of information that they did not know. How could they tell you something they didn't know?
That's what they tell
They hadn't
you.
claimed the gun, so they're lying too. Do you really think they said the truth?
There was also a witness testimony from a man who saw and spoke to Alex at one of his crime scenes on the night that it was committed. And of course, Alex had some excuse for why this was untrue.
Says he saw you.
Do you believe that? Have you seen?
You tell me, were you there?
No, I wasn't there.
I'm not sure about you guys, but this part definitely gives me major OJ if I did it vibes. At the end of the day, maybe he did not commit these crimes, and it would of course be extremely tragic that he has been wrongly convicted. But if he did in fact commit these crimes, it's pretty unsettling that after all these years, he still just can't even admit it. In our 4th spot, we have Ed Kemper. I featured Ed in part 2 of this series, but I think this other interview he did was worse than the first one. So Ed Kemper, or Big Ed, is an American serial killer who took the lives of 10 individuals. This reign started back in 1964, when he took the lives of his grandparents. And he said he did it just to see what killing felt like. This hour-and-a-half interview was filmed in 1991, when Ed was 42 years old. I think what makes this so disturbing is how smart he is.
Extended period of time, and then in the early 80s, they came up with this differentiation called serial killing, which was living 2 lives, basically. negative side of that living, he would say this person was living a cover life.
He's very well spoken, and in the interview, he went on to describe his tendencies and why he thinks he became a killer, and how he thinks young people need to be supported so they don't end up like him.
Getting youngsters like that help to where they can find themselves and they can find value in themselves and they can find value in interacting with others, and they go in a different direction than what I did.
It's crazy and creepy. Like, this dude is too smart for his own good. In our third spot, we have Jodi Arias. On June 4th, 2008, Jodi Arias took the life of her boyfriend, Travis Alexander. He was in the shower at the time of his death. It's really brutal what she did to him. After she did the deed, she took photos of him on her camera and then threw it in the washing machine as an attempt to get rid of evidence. But upon investigating, her DNA, among other things, were found at the crime scene and she was arrested. So this interview was conducted after her trial. People were outraged by the number of lies she tells in this interview.
It was unexpected. For me, yes, because there was no premeditation on my part. I can see how things look that way, but I didn't expect the premeditation. I could see maybe the felony murder because of how the law is written.
She claims the murder wasn't premeditated, but her actions say otherwise. She had it all planned out. She took his life and then dyed her hair, rented a car, cleaned up the crime scene, and fled. In the interview, she also tries to gain sympathy from the watchers. You can tell she's putting on a face of sorrow. You even see her clock the camera, and then when she realizes she's being recorded, that's when that whole act began. It's really scary and dark. In our number 2 spot today, we have Ted Bundy. If you know anything about true crime, you most definitely have heard of one of the most famous killers of all time, Ted Bundy. Ted killed upwards of 30 people during his crime spree in the 1970s. Most interviews with Ted are extremely well known, but there is one interview that is very disturbing that is not quite as popular as the others. In this interview, he is talking about taking the life of 18-year-old student Georgianne Hawkins. The chilling part of it is how he talks about things just so matter-of-factly, like it's a casual conversation between friends and not him describing the horrific acts that he committed.
She was quite lucid, talking about things. It's funny, it's not funny, but it's odd, the kinds of things people say under those circumstances. She had a Spanish test the next day, and she thought that I had taken her to help tutor me for a Spanish test.
After that clip, this interview unfortunately gets even more disturbing as he begins whispering some more terrifying details. When I first saw this interview, I was listening through headphones, and you guys, the chill you get from having an absolute monster whispering in your ear is truly incomparable.
The Hawkins girl's head was severed and taken up the road about 25 to 50 yards and buried in a location about 10 yards west of the road on a rocky hillside.
After that horrible whispering part, he continues on with the rest of the details of that day in the same casual conversation tone that we heard before. If it wasn't obvious before, after listening to this specific interview, it is very clear just how disturbing Ted Bundy really was. In our number 1 spot today, we have Michael Turner. In 2008, Michael Turner fatally shot his wife as she was about to end their relationship and also was planning to turn him into the authorities. In the process of this terrible crime, he also injured 2 of their. As far as I know, the injuries to the were accidental, but this obviously does not take away from the terrible thing that he did, as well as the fact of, that is literally one of the many, many, many reasons why you shouldn't kill someone. In a jailhouse interview, Michael gives a chilling account of what happened on that day, as well as discussing intention and motive. There is a part where he is discussing how he loves his kids and how they love him.
You say you love your kids.
Man, hey, you see, I've been up for him since I've been home for real, man. Yeah, I love my kids. And my kids love me, you hear me? I don't know if they still do. But I know my son told me shit before he left. Before I left the house, he told me shit. Daddy, you still love me. You know what I'm saying?
But then later, when asked about how he could love his kids and then harm their mom, he gives quite an answer.
You say you love your kids, but you killed their mama.
So what?
And you're going to jail.
So what?
You left them alone.
What?
You left them alone.
Left them alone?
Yeah.
They got grandparents, they got no people who love them. You know, I already don't know. They mama up. You know what I'm saying?
It honestly is this callous disregard for the life that he took, as well as the effect this whole situation will have on his kid's life, that is just absolutely unfathomable to me.
Alright guys, that's all for today's video. Let's move quickly along.
Okay, guys. I will see you in my third video, so I see you then.